Hey, and welcome to Bounce, Grow, Connect, and Flow, the 7 proven skills to succeed in your life. This is a practical session based on the training I do for leaders, for parents, for professionals, for athletes around the world. If we take a look at Bounce, Grow, Connect, and Flow, these 7 skills, all right, are what I think each one of us should look at carefully, translate into our own language, and take action on. The first is to understand the why, the what, and the how. What is this idea of a better human life all about? Secondly, rapid bounce. We're going to confront challenges. You need to bounce, not back, but forward. Third, tactical calm. When the pressure's on, how do you calm yourself to be effective in that moment? And 4, sleep and rhythm in your day. The foundation of flow. 5th, how to master emotion. And of course, this is where it gets really interesting and very exciting, and it can really be a big life changer. 6, the mind, attention and presence. And finally, skill number 7, how do you achieve flow and plan your life to achieve that? All right, so let's start with the why, the what, and the how. Let's take an example. So the UNICEF Child Wellbeing Report came out last week, causing a little bit of a stir in New Zealand because our mental well-being, this is for our children, was number 38 out of 38 countries, right at the bottom of the list. The physical health of young people in New Zealand was rated 33 out of 38. Skills were 23 out of 38. This is a conundrum. If you cared about your kids, wouldn't you want to improve their mental, physical, emotional well-being? So the world is looking much more carefully at these factors. We're considering what it means to be a fully engaged, successful person, physically, emotionally, and mentally. We use a spiral to try and simplify the complexity. So just think about the spiral in very, very simple terms. You all know there are days you wake up and you think, whoa, I feel great. Top of the world, calm, clear-minded, effective. And there are other days we really feel like death warmed up. This is altitude. And there are 4 perspectives on your altitude. The first is, can you see where you are? We call that insight. The second is, can you move quickly to where you need to be right now? Right? How do you make the adjustment to your body, your posture, your breathing? How do you adjust what you're feeling? How do you adjust what you're thinking? And the third perspective is empathy. Can you step into the shoes of another person? Can you read what their body is telling you, what their emotions are telling you, what they might even be thinking? Empathy. And number 4 is influence or leadership. If you can understand and master yourself, you can read and influence others effectively. And what the spiral does is brings all of those emotional, mental, and physical factors into one integrated model. We want the truth. So I'm totally focused on being evidence-based. Everything in this work has been checked again and again against peer-reviewed studies done in different areas with different people in different ways. It is integral. In other words, it honors the body, it honors the emotion, it honors the mind, and even honors spirit. Very important to be flexible in our diverse world, and it's practical. And you're probably asking, hey, does this stuff work? Well, here's an example. So we have always seen over many years of tens of thousands of people going through rigorous data analysis that every category and every factor of resilience improves. In this example at the Ice House, these are 115 owner-managers who went on to contribute 15 billion to the New Zealand economy. Through the time of their program, from pre-assessment, the training, which covers the same content we're going to talk about today, to the end, you can see some significant gains. 44% reduction in depression, 54% reduction in distress, 66% improvement in well-being, 48% improvement in emotional intelligence, 52% improvement in mental skills. These are big gains, and that's what we're on about. And our data can also help you understand what really matters. So if you want to build the strength of successful, resilient people, you've got to look at fulfillment, focus, presence, bounce, integrity. And if you want to mitigate risk, here are the key risks for you to look at. Can I stop worry? Can I reduce fatigue? Can I prevent being self-critical? How do I stop rumination? That's thinking about the past. And what about hypervigilance? All right, so we can be very clear about what matters. And we can see, if we want to be practical, what actually changes. And you can see the strength side, things like contemplation, sleep quality, relaxation, fitness, situation, agility. Aren't those some of the practical outcomes you might enjoy? What about the risk side? Would you like to be less self-critical? Improve, reduce your hypervigilance, sloth, worry? All right, these are the changes we see. It's a program that works. It generates results. In this particular study, you see a 44.8% improvement in resilience. In other words, people have moved away from mental, emotional, and physical risk, and they've moved towards connection and flow. The central theme that drives everything we're talking about today is, where do you get flow in your life? Many of us now understand flow, but let's quickly recap. Flow is a state, particularly of mind, which allows the emotions and the body to work 5 times more efficiently. So a leader in flow can do 5 days' work in 1 day. That's quite a good outcome. This is the state the athlete or the performer looks for, the artist, the climber. It is a very interesting state, all right? And you can think about, when did you last have flow? There are 4 things you can look for. When was my mind last quiet? When did thinking stop? 2, when did timekeeping stop? The day just shot by. 3, when did a difficult task feel effortless and even graceful? And 4, the afterglow is fantastic. Those are the days you'll go home and say, I love what I do. It's a unique state. In flow, your brain is firing theta and gamma waves. These are very fast waves that connect things very efficiently and very powerfully. You have more dopamine, that's like cocaine. You have more endorphin, that's like heroin. You have more anandamide, that's like some of the substance in marijuana. So not only can you be 5 times more productive, but you can actually have a self-induced drug high. No jail time, no damage, except perhaps for one. And this is where flow becomes really important to contextualize. You cannot be in flow all day. Flow is very expensive. Think of it as your turbocharger. You are going for it. After flow, you need recovery. You need to drop your brain rhythms into delta. You need to sleep. You need to relax, breathe slowly, hydrate, massage out the knots. And then we need to set a challenge again. And then the 4th part is knowing how to relax back into flow. Not to rise to the challenge, to exhale, relax into flow. All right, so that's our why, the what, and the how. Let's go into skill number 2, rapid bounce. Life is going to throw adversity at you. If you stretch for flow goals, sometimes you will fail and you'll have to bounce. As I'm talking today, the America's Cup boats are in fact racing right outside. These guys train for bounce over and over and over again. Now, part of bounce is understanding when you need to do it. It is my opinion that 50% of your bounce is based on recognizing what happens when you confront adversity. Alrighty, so resilience failure really starts in the mind. In fact, it starts in the prefrontal cortex, this thin sliver of new brain, perhaps 250,000 years old. This part of your brain is really what distinguishes you from other creatures. It is new, therefore it's fragile. The world we're living in is intense. It's complex. We're multitasking. Evidence eye-tracking young people shows that they switch attention every 18 seconds. And this leads to confusion. An overloaded prefrontal cortex. We often think that the human brain can work like a computer. It's not the case. And the first recognition here is that we pay attention in bursts. And then the brain needs to rest. Now, with a lot of training, you can maybe stay focused for an hour, but for many people, remember the kids, it's just 18 seconds. Because it's so expensive to pay attention, it burns a lot of blood and a lot of glucose. So at some point, the body's watching, the body is wise, right? And it's saying, all this blood is going to the brain. What about my liver, my kidneys, and my organs? And the body pulls the plug. So 1 minute I'm talking to you, next moment I'm with my fairies. And I don't even know I've left the conversation. When I do come back to the conversation, my mind will try to build a bridge. It will fill in the gaps. And often that is pure fabrication. All right, so when we disengage, we'll lose attention, we might be bored, we become distracted. This is a study of judges. Proves the point. All right, 1,100 hours of judge survey. The question, firstly, was a judge biased to Israeli as compared to Arab prisoners? Same crimes, same time in jail, or due for parole? Well, in fact, the study showed no bias towards the people, but it did show that it matters a whole lot when you see the judge. If you come in first thing in the morning, you have a 70% chance of going home, being freed. If you come in the afternoon, it drops to less than 10% likelihood of getting parole. In other words, what you're seeing here is how fragile the brain is, how we get decision fatigue. When you're considering someone's parole, or a difficult leadership challenge, or a difficult maths problem, or a difficult relation problem, it requires this complex thinking, this type 2 thinking, which is super expensive. And unlike a computer, the brain fades on us. As a consequence, the brain's on and it's off, and it's on and it's off. But all through the day, it's becoming more fatigued. If you can understand this simple idea of the mind under pressure, you've started to solve the problems of bounce. In other words, to take your breaks in advance. Now, next level is emotional. And this is part of our new thinking, is to kind of see, well, how, when the mind fails, when we disengage and make errors, like the judges, or forgetting to pick up the kids, or forgetting to say sorry to someone, what happens then? First step, fear, or what is now termed in many quarters the flight reaction. These are very old reactions. They go all the way back to reptiles, birds, and mammals. Flight is an emotional reaction that occurs in the body through the sympathetic nervous system to help you get away. So it starts with a sense of doubt. Oh, what's this? Then it thinks, oh, this is dangerous. Then you feel fear. Then you just think, how do I get away from this? That is your flight response. So in detail, it's a threat arousal that switches to fear. And some of us, that's our preferred response. It's activated. It's sympathetic. It uses adrenaline and epinephrine. In mild cases, it's anxiety and worry. In severe cases, it's fear and panic. All right, it leads to avoidance. We just want to run away. We want to evade the problem. We may even lie, deceive people to not have to confront the truth. And it will cause distress in your body, heart symptoms, asthma symptoms, gut symptoms, skin, and even muscle tension. However, some people have a slightly different response, and we term this the anger or the fight response. So here we think, hey, this is not right. I feel violated. We feel this anger. You want to attack. You feel hostile towards someone else. And you'll see people respond differently to adversity. Some get anxious, some get angry. We're seeing right now as this COVID situation unfolds. So fight is a threat arousal which switches over to anger. Again, it's the sympathetic system, runs out of the back of the spine, adrenaline or epinephrine. In mild cases, frustration, outrage, blame. In more severe cases, we get anger and rage, and that can lead to attack, revenge, and lashing out at other people. And the distress is something different, because in anger, the blood comes upwards to our chest, to our arms, to our jaw. So people might get swallowing problems. Angry people get far more heart problems. In fact, they can have 17 times more arrhythmias and up to 4 times the rate of heart attacks. It causes inflammation. As Woody Allen said, I'm not angry, I'm growing a tumor, and it will cause muscle tension. All right, very useful to understand the different activation responses when things go pear-shaped. Some move towards fear, some towards anger. And the third option is the freeze response, where the threat triggers collapse. Imagine you find yourself in the middle of a war zone with bombs and things flying around you. To run away or to lash out could be very destructive. So your body chooses the freeze reaction to just collapse you, because there is a chance that if you collapse, you won't get hurt. And this may be the wise action under severe threat. All right, so the freeze reaction is a collapse, it's submission, it leads to fatigue, and it can bring on sadness. All right, so now we have 3 responses: the fear or flight, the anger or fight, and the sadness and collapse or freeze response. Very useful to understand these. All right, and as we said again, even a snake can play dead. Birds will play dead. It comes from what's called the old vagus nerve, which we're going to come back to. Your blood pressure drops. Very dangerous for us as humans, because the brain doesn't have enough blood flow to function. All right, you can actually cause yourself brain damage, and it can lead to voiding of the bowels and the bladder. All right, in a mild case, it's about fatigue, it's about submission, it's about not agitating a situation further. It can lead to exhaustion, sadness, even chronic fatigue. All right, you may see someone slump, they might burst into tears. It's that fainting when you cut yourself deeply and you see the blood welling up. It's a deer in the headlights situation. And it starts to show you some of the depression symptoms, often in the gut, often in terms of fatigue, anhedonia, which is loss of joy, and sleep problems. All right, so quick refresh if you want to know. Flight, fight, and freeze. First 2 sympathetic. Second is the so-called old vagus nerve, that we're going to learn about. Primary flight is a fear reaction. Fight is an anger reaction. Freeze is a submission or submit reaction. All right, and they can progress from very mild to very, very severe. Important to understand that. Now, many people who work in this field have realized that by simply being able to detect these concepts, your ability to bounce, your ability to stay connected and effective in life is massively improved. All right, so once we understand this, we've actually got a bounce methodology. First, we need to understand what each of the steps down feels like. We've got to learn to recognize them quickly. All right, and then we have to take action. So at the freeze level, we're looking for connection. we're looking for help. This is time to be courageous and humble. Go and see someone who can help you understand what's going on and define your symptoms clearly. There are many ways to manage this. A whole lot of lifestyle options, counseling options, breathing options, yoga options, even sleep, even exercise and nutrition, things like the Mediterranean diet. In the fight response, slow down, restrain yourself, show respect, seek to understand others. It's a very different situation because remember, in fight, all I want to do is blame you. I would learn to understand, how did you get to that position? Can I see your position? And how do we learn to resolve this? In the flight response, there's often lots of the anxiety or distress symptoms, so things like relaxation, good sleep, recovery, and slowing your breathing so that you can start to change the vagal activation. And then at the top, understanding the idea of focus, relax, what we call the daily working rhythm. All right, so your job from Bounce, understand each of those levels. What does it feel like? What do you experience? How can you identify it quickly? And then work out for you what's a smart, powerful Bounce tactic. When you feel flight response, anxiety, what do you need to do? Once you understand that, you really have laid a framework for your resilience. And what I'm going to talk about briefly is the concept of tactical calm. How do we generate skill under pressure? Instead of reacting with freeze and flight and fight reactions, how can we be deliberate to respond skillfully under pressure? So that when the heat is on, you can be your calm, most focused, and most connected best. To do this, we need to understand our vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, or the 10th cranial nerve, is the longest nerve in the body. It comes from the base of the brain, runs down past the carotid, into the chest, around the heart and the lungs, down through the diaphragm to the organs. When I was a medical student, my job in second year was to carve out the vagus nerve. It took me 6 months. It is indeed a long and complicated nerve and very difficult to unravel from the complexity of the body. Now we've understood a lot more about the vagus nerve. So remember we talked about the freeze reaction. Cut hand, blood wells up, I faint. That's caused a vasovagal attack, a faint, or the old fibers of this vagus nerve. We also have new fibers, and these fibers are called the new vagus or the ventral vagus. In mammals, and particularly in humans, this new part of the vagus nerve is very, very trainable. What does that mean? When myelin, which is a fatty substance, wraps around these fibers, your new vagus nerve becomes more powerful. Let's take a couple of examples. So if you think of an emergency worker, a firefighter, an ambulance operator, these people have well myelinated, well-trained vagus nerves. So when they step into challenge, they're calm, they're connected, they're effective. A yogi develops a very strong vagus nerve. When you watch your favorite performer, be that in sport or the arts, you're probably looking at a very strong vagus nerve. Well, there are lots of practical options. All right, simply disobeying the common advice, which is take a deep breath. In fact, you don't want to do that. When you take a deep breath, you use your secondary muscles of respiration and you activate the sympathetic system. In fact, you want to breathe out. All the way out. Pause. Simply doing that periodically through the day will begin to myelinate your vagus nerve. If you use diaphragmatic breathing, the foundation of this is simply understanding my primary breathing muscles. That instead of breathing like this and sighing or breath holding, These are symptoms of hyperventilation when your breathing has become fast, shallow, and abnormal. We need to switch that. To do that, we need to breathe low and slow. All right, so when you exhale, the diaphragm relaxes upwards and pushes the air out. Pause, let it really relax, and then when you inhale, through the nose, you breathe in low and slow. So we develop a practice with breathing of tactical calm. No need to get weird, no need to get mystical. This is practical stuff, but it's also the foundation of any good prayer, connection, contemplation, or meditation practice. We need a nice, light, long spine. All right, that allows the diaphragm to move most efficiently. You might inhale gently through the nose, but inhale low so you can feel your belly and your lower ribs expand. And then exhale through the nose, 6 seconds. Pause a little, gently in. 4 seconds and 6 seconds out. When you breathe out for 6, in for 4, you have a 10-second breath. That is 6 breaths per minute. Now your vagus nerve is active and it's myelinating. We know that ideally we want to try and generate 8 minutes of this kind of breathing every day. Now you might do this in your morning prayer. You might do it with your Apple Watch every hour, just simply breathe for 1 minute. You may do it in nature, you may do it relaxing as you set up for a power nap. There are many ways to do this, and as you get better, your vagus nerve will get thicker. Your inflammation will drop, you'll be calmer, more focused, more connected. And if you practice this over a couple of years, you actually change the way your brain and your emotions operate. And yes, of course, you can do a contemplative practice. You can pray, you can meditate, you can do yoga, you can practice kindness. All right, positive emotion is one of the quickest ways to activate the vagus. But for many of us in a virtual world, it may be you don't have time. Well, rush out to the nearest tap and toss cold water around your face and your neck. That is powerful vagus activation. So is swimming underwater. You might want to do a massage. Powerful way to activate the vagus. Gargling, fasting, laughter, singing. Face-to-face connection. Not so much on the screen. All right, and sunshine and vitamin D. And for those of us in the southern hemisphere, just be aware our vitamin D at this time of year is very low. Good idea to take a supplement, both for the overall health, even COVID protection, and also for your vagus nerve. All right, so just to recap, the key to tactical calm is to have a practice. No nonsense, biologically sound. Don't take a deep breath. Relax and exhale. Pause. Gently inhale. Repeat. And re-engage. And behind the scene is how we can start to build this locking together. So the freeze response, if you like, is our most ancient and desperate response to adversity. And of course, if you cannot get away, that's the best thing to do. And it's a good decision for your body to actually freeze you in certain situations so you don't cause yourself more damage. Fight, next best option. All right, so if you cannot run, fight. But if you can run, run. So freeze, flight, and fight are kind of very basic, primitive reactions. What we've just been talking about in tactical calm is how you master the yellow zone or that relaxed zone. 8 minutes a day. All right, it is an absolutely key switch in your life from a desperate existence to a playful, trusting, enjoyable, and performing existence. So as you layer up that vagus nerve with myelin, you will begin to trust more. All right, it is essential to have the vagus nerve active before we can open an empathy portal. Can you imagine someone who's dealing with depression or anxiety or hostility? Very hard for them to trust. Right? So the bridge is to build that calm, tactical calm skill. That leads to trust, to intimacy. When we trust each other, now we can be playful, we can try stuff, we can tell the truth, we can race here and innovate there. All right? This is play. And play, we know, is critical not just for children and little baby animals, but also for you and I as adults. Because it is in play that we practice to perform. If a little baby animal wants to survive, it's got to practice running away from stuff. It's got to practice chasing stuff. It's got to practice rolling through the mud. In just the same way, whether you are a young person learning to do an exam or a maths problem, or whether you're an older person dealing with a difficult conflict, practice, play, get someone you trust, learn to do it before you actually face the real situation. Very important idea, and I think we'll find much more about this as things go. All right, so remember, relax bridges us to trust, trust bridges us to play, and play leads to flow. A foundation of flow is to have rhythm in your life. This is practice number 4. It's not about being obsessive compulsive. It's simply asking the question, to be that better version of myself, what do I need to do each day sort of consistently? So as I look at my own daily practice, I don't muck around with sleep. I take that very, very serious. Execute quite religiously. Flow. Love to build flow into the day. If I possibly can, I'll put it in my diary. Exercise, a key bit. The day I do some good exercise is the day I feel better. If I have a pressured day, I try to swim. All right? Taking quick breaks, in between calls, knowing how to get away rapidly. Quick switches. You're working from home, go over to the family. You've got to be able to quickly switch your attention, switch your thinking, switch your emotions to being part of a family and having a good cool down in the evening. 3 questions to consider when you look at your sleep. The first is, what is your sleep need? In other words, how long do you need to sleep each night to be that best version of yourself? The second, the timing. When should you go to bed? When should you wake up? And the third, how do you get good quality? And we can look at these separately. All right, so your sleep need is species specific. A giraffe sleeps for 4 hours. A lion can sleep for 18 hours. Humans, we believe, need between 7 and 8 hours. But each one of us is different. So your first question is to work out what is your sleep need, or S phase. In my case, 7 hours, 22 minutes. I keep that very, very consistent, because when I sleep a little more than that, don't feel so good. If I sleep less, also don't feel so good. There are risks to sleeping too little and risks to sleeping too much. And simply think about it from this point of view. When you find your sleep need, you will wake up a better version of yourself, physically, emotionally, mentally. Every single physiological structure, from your immunity to your hormones and your ability to deal with pressure, is improved by meeting sleep need. Second question, timing. We all have a circadian clock. All right, the circadian clock is driven by 5 clock genes in your body. This is not optional, and some of us will be larks, some of us will be owls, and some of us will be flexible. A lark loves to go to bed early and wake up early. The owl, not so much. All right, so the lark has quite a short circadian cycle. So these clocks are running, and they're also trying to work out, where are you in the day-night cycle? When your body's circadian clock lines up with the day-night, in other words, sunrise and sunset, everything harmonizes. All of these hormone temperature factors start to work together. Every time you dysregulate your clock to the day-night cycle, your life is chaos. You're jet-lagged effectively. All right, so think of it this way. During the day, humans are active, warm, alert. We're very effective, one of the most effective species on the planet. But at night, we really are prey. We shouldn't run around in the bush because something else will eat us. So humans have learned to sleep at night and be successful during the day. And that key difference is temperature-based. So at the end of your day, you need to drop your temperature about 1.6 degrees. And that's facilitated by the hormone melatonin. When you're on your screen, you can reduce your melatonin secretion by between 20 and 45%. The key to getting your clock right is to allow yourself to cool down before sleep so that when you do go to sleep, you drop off fast. And the second part is to wake up consistently with the blue light of day. When you get blue light in your eyes, it wakes up the suprachiasmatic nucleus and is what we call the primary Zeitgeber. It brings your clock and sunrise together. You will have a better day and you'll sleep better the next night. All right, so 2 simple takeaways. Stabilize your wake-up time. Never sleep in the weekends. Help your kids understand this, because if you sleep in on Saturday and sleep in on Sunday, on Monday morning you're dysregulated. And on Monday morning is the highest rate of suicides, of heart attacks, of strokes, and of motor vehicle accidents. All right, Mondays, after the jet lag of sleeping in, are dangerous. Don't sleep in. Keep your clock synchronized right through the 7 days of the week. And make sure you have an hour to an hour and a half of cool down time. No screens, cooler temperatures, drop the LED lights, use yellow light, perhaps go outside, take the dog for a walk. And that leads to your third question. Make sure you're getting great quality. All right, to get good quality, you've got to use that cool down phase to drop into deep sleep. Think of those first 2 cycles of deep sleep between, say, 10 and 2 a.m. This is recovering your body, recovering your hormones, rebuilding your muscles and your brain, restructuring your brain for the next day, so that deep work is actually done in deep sleep. Dreaming sleep is quite different. So while deep sleep, the mind is very still, there's a big wave running from the prefrontal cortex backwards. In dreaming sleep, the brain can be more active than when you're awake. And we know 4 things happen in dreaming sleep. 1, it's all about memory. When you take away dreaming sleep, memory drops by 50%. If you drink too much alcohol, dreaming sleep collapses. Alcohol and sleeping tablets dismember dreaming sleep, and as a consequence, drop your memory retention by up to 50%. Secondly, dreaming is really important for your emotional intelligence. All right, our ability to deal with complex personal situations. Third, it looks like early days, a couple of big studies happening, a couple finished now, showing that when you get dreaming sleep, your brain recovers from the trauma of the previous day, even to the point that it can protect people from post-traumatic stress disorder. All right, and fourth factor of dreaming sleep is it's all about creativity. The old tale, sleep on it, is absolutely right. If you frame a problem, have a good night's sleep that cycles through the deep and then the dreaming sleep, you will most likely solve that problem in the best way. Okay, in summary, we're looking at what's my sleep need, get it every night, what's my timing, keep it consistent, understand your sleep structure. Perhaps you need to use a Fitbit or an Apple Watch for a little while to understand this, and optimize it. And remember the dangers of distress, of asthma, of snoring, of mood disorders, and perhaps importantly, of alcohol and and sleeping pills. These will wreck these important 3 elements of sleep. All right, and this is where we need to build the key practices of your day together. How would I prioritize this? Number 1 today, get your relaxation. I think that's the single most important thing. Use the breathing, be a master of tactical calm. 2, prioritize your sleep. 3, get a little bit of exercise in every day. The more comprehensive your exercise, flexibility, aerobic, some strength, balancing, all of these are key factors that would sit at number 3. Alrighty guys, basic resilience is complete. We've had a good look at bounce, we've had a good look at growing, your tactical calm, your physical well-being, your daily practice. These are the foundations. But it's when we get into emotion and mind that things get really interesting. So think of these as hygiene factors. The next stuff really is real turnaround stuff, and it can be a little tricky for some of us who maybe grew up not learning about how emotions and the mind work. So we're going to fix that. So let's bridge this. So we've talked already in looking at how resilience fails that there are some primal reactions to adversity. They're emotional. All right, so your flight response is fear, avoiding threat. Your fight response is anger. It's attacking the threat. And your freeze response is linked to sadness and submission, playing dead. If we think about this in terms of emotional intelligence, these are the impulsive or destructive reactions. We could possibly add craving and maybe fatigue to these. So let's understand how they work from an emotional intelligence point of view. It starts with a trigger. Someone behaves really badly at a party. There's an instant reaction. The next moment you know, you've grabbed them and you're shouting at them. There is strong emotion. All right, it's reactive. Fear and flight, anger and fight, sad and collapse. And afterwards we think, my gosh, what was I doing? All right, these are what we call amygdala hijacks. When your emotional world is operated from the lower part of the brain or the amygdala. These are fast, 0.3 of a second. They are reliable, but they don't allow thinking, because thinking takes slightly longer. We take around about 0.6 of a second to think. So it can be really awkward, particularly if you get caught into this pattern. And perhaps to help you understand this, take a moment just to think about what's your default destructive emotion. When you get triggered, do you freeze? Do you go into fight? Or do you go into flight? Really important questions, because in that you will start to get a sense of the nature and the experience of sadness, of anger, and of fear. The problem with these impulses or amygdala hijacks is they wreck your life one situation at a time. And this is where we bring in what we call impulse control drills. And just yesterday on the radio, Professor Ritchie from the Dunedin study was talking about the power of impulse control to change lives. All right, so let's think about this in very practical steps. Let's say you've got a child who can get really angry, can really lose it, and have rant and rage attacks. There are 4 steps to think through as we guide people towards impulse control. Firstly, restraint. Now for that child, it might be understanding, that sort of behavior can't happen in this home. If you want to lie on the floor and slam your fists and scream and shout, you are going to your bedroom. When you stop doing it, then you come out. Right? We need to be firm. We need to be calm. The worst thing to do when someone else is upset is for you to get upset. It just amplifies the situation. Second thing, We want to help kids learn how to stretch the time a little by exhaling, relaxing the body just a little bit, so that you get a chance to get into the front of your head and be sensible. All right, if you can allow time to pass between that trigger and your reaction, you can actually choose what to do. The third step for people is to learn that it's okay. It is fine to have destructive emotion. The challenge is, how do we express them calmly and with respect? So when your child says, "Mum, I'm really, really angry," that is a huge success. They've identified it and they've communicated it. And when you and I, in a difficult conversation, can say to others, "I'm really upset about, I'm actually feeling terribly disappointed, and I can imagine you're upset too." This is a big change in the maturity and our ability to start to have good influence situations. And the ultimate is to be like that ambulance worker or firefighter, where you can be calm and positive even in serious adversity. All right, so step one in mastering emotion is impulse control. Recognizing where we get hijacked. Is it anger? Is it fear? Is it sadness? And learning to restrain the first response, to breathe out, give yourself time to choose, and then to express your emotion. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm feeling anxious. All right, and once you can do those three, you really have hit the tipping point. Second part of emotional intelligence is understanding the power of emotions. Emotions work much like muscles. So if you're going to work your arm, you need a bicep and a tricep, and that allows you to do a lot of cool stuff. In exactly the same way, our emotions work in balance. For example, if I get really angry in the traffic, I'm firing up my anger muscle. When I do that, I can be a little less kind than I normally am. If I can activate kindness in the traffic, it deactivates anger. So you can think about skill. There's nothing wrong with being angry. The trick is to recognize it and ask the question, what's the counter? How do I move towards the counter? If you can work with your emotions in this way, it is an absolute game changer. So once again, we can step through these emotional mastery drills. Number one, learn to detect them fast. Name and describe them. All right, when you can say, "I am angry," the front of your brain lights up, the reptilian brain quietens. By naming the emotion, you're already moving into a state where you can counter it. All right, so you look at the opposite. How do I tame the anger? Maybe take a moment, breathe, look at the anger, and then reframe with kindness. So let's go through. Let's see how many of these you can answer. So take a moment. When you feel fear, what, if fear is the one, the agonist, what's your antagonist? So when I'm feeling afraid, what do I need to search for? When you feel anger, we already talked about that, kindness. When you're feeling really sad, disappointed, disillusioned, what are you searching for? When you feel craving, when you really got to have that chocolate, what are you searching for? When you feel fatigue, you're exhausted, tired, what are you searching for? This idea is, if you like, emotion regulation or positivity. It is a super skill in terms of emotion. All right, so think about these reframing drills. Fear, you look for calm, curiosity, anger, respect, kindness. Sad, gratitude, appreciation. Craving, contentment, patience. And when you feel fatigue, you're looking for your energy, looking for your passion. So we've had impulse control, we've had emotion regulation, and the third element of emotional mastery is empathy. Right? This is a vast topic in and of itself. Just remember that empathy, and one of the biologists who works in this talks about an empathy portal. It's, if you like, the lens with which you observe other people. Some of us don't act very kindly. Some of us actually like to cause pain. And we call these people hostile, possibly even sociopaths. And in every business, in every community, there's going to be a very small, maybe 1% of the population who are actively destructive to other people. But it's rare. The problem much more of our time is a lack of understanding, where we simply don't recognize emotions. We don't value them. We denigrate them, saying, oh, you're all emotional, or don't wear your emotions on your sleeve. This is not intelligent, because we can step forward. And the neurobiologists have shown us very, very, very clearly there are 3 types of empathy. Each type of empathy happens in a different part of the brain, and each type of empathy can be trained. It takes no more than 6 weeks. Step 1, develop your physical empathy. When you communicate people, try to step into the space, eye to eye, face to face, not being too overwhelming, but making sure you're present and you've cleared the distractions away. That is what you term presence or physical empathy. Second, emotional empathy. A little more tricky, right? Because now we've got to understand emotions. Am I showing what? You see, anger maybe, or sadness, or fear. These facial expressions, even on a screen, are flitting by in 0.15 of a second. If you can learn to recognize facial expressions, if you can learn to discern the tone of voice, you have a window to the way another human being is feeling. Now that's very powerful, because when I can notice that you're showing a little bit of sadness, I can immediately know that you're thinking you're feeling disappointed. You really wish you hadn't done that. You're thinking, gosh, this is happening a bit too often. In fact, this can progress, sadness being the foundation of depression, is to the kind of language, thinking, which is everything bad always happens to me. All right? So by seeing emotions, having emotional empathy, you develop cognitive empathy, where you can have a sense in a super fast period of time, 0.15 a second, what another person is thinking. And if you're actually skillful enough to be able to say, gosh, I can understand you must be really upset by that. All right? That person really believes you understand them. They will feel more relaxed, they will feel more trusting, and it's much more likely you can work together to move to kind of the final point, which is being skillful with emotions. We can care too much. Sometimes when someone is really hurting, you actually feel bad. So you can see another person as sad, but now you feel really upset. You can feel the tears pricking your eyes. What do you do? All right, when another person's emotion affects you so badly, you do need to be careful, because this is where too much empathy, or let's for safety call it sympathy, can cause problems. So let's say the child is crying. I'm really upset by the child crying. We call that empathic distress. And I just want the kid to stop crying. Why do I want the kid to stop crying? Because it's making me feel bad. So I reach for a sweet and give the kid a sweet. That is not in the kid's interests, but it's taking away your pain. In the same way, we might give too much to a beggar who really is manipulating and chosen that as a job. And we've got to be very careful with our children, very careful as managers, to recognize that good empathy requires inner strength. It is passive. You want to be able to assess someone else, but you don't want to be collapsing into empathic distress, where another person's emotions are causing you to be ineffective. All right, so tough love. Or care and candor is when we can show people that we really care about them, we want them to be successful, we want their suffering to stop, but we're going to tell them the truth. We're going to use skill to help them solve their problems. All right, so practical empathy drills. Step 1, if you want to improve a relationship, step in, be physically present. Show them unequivocally you care, you're interested. Second, learn to read these non-verbal cues. Third, take time to say, gosh, I can understand you might be a bit angry about this or that. All right, show them you're interested in their perspective. And fourth, take time to get to know the whole person. That can really save you in tricky situations. All right, skill number 6, attention and presence. Now, thinking about your brain, you have roughly 50 to 70,000 thoughts per day. If you take the time to count and watch the thoughts you have through a day, I wonder how many of those are useful. Sometimes no more than 5 are doing you any good. So the question is, what am I thinking about? Where does my thinking go? And this is the first step in mastering attention and presence, is to be aware of what thinking is. How many thousand thoughts go into the past and how many thousand go into the future? That's a really good starting point. So you can start to think, perhaps at 2 o'clock in the morning, where do your thoughts go? Are you someone who's worrying about the mortgage or worried about how the kid's going to get through the exam? Or are you someone who's thinking about the past, about an event yesterday that was really upsetting, and over you go? So the challenge is, if we go into the future, we tend to dredge up fear and anxiety, and that spins the cycle of worry. The more you worry, the more you dredge up fear. Anxiety is at least 50% correlated with worry. Anxiety right at the moment is the most common mental health disorder, and it's paired with worries. If we look objectively at a worry, let's say it's 2 a.m. and I'm worrying about the mortgage, what's the point? All right, there is very little value. If you can step up and say, okay, that is a concern. Tomorrow, I'm going to solve this problem. You've stepped from worry to hope. That's fine, but it's quite difficult. All right, and some people have wisely suggested to me, never worry alone. Right? There is no point in fretting about something. It just dredges up fear. It makes you less useful. Now, if we go into the past, we also got to be careful. Now, technically, thinking about the past we call rumination. Why? Because I draw up the cud of a situation that I swallowed yesterday. X happened, I swallowed it, I wake up, and now my mind goes over. I can't believe he did this. This is outrageous. This is the final straw. I dredge up anger. Anger does not mix with sleep. Or sometimes when we go into the past, we say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. What an idiot. Story of my life. I always do this. There's no hope. And now I dredge up sadness. All right, so angry and sad people tend to ruminate on the past. Anxious people tend to worry. The simple trick of attention and presence is to bring your mind to the present. So in very practical terms, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you should be sleeping. What about relaxing out, putting a hand in your belly, slow your breathing. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. And literally count. And each time a worry or a ruminant comes up in the past, come back to the breathing. Be able to turn your thinking into an object. When you're caught up in worry, you are the worry. It is like being in a washing machine. You've got to get out of the washing machine and look at that worry as an object and say, well, that's a very unhappy washing machine. Turn it off. All right? And the way you turn it off first is to distract yourself. Come back to your breathing. Second is to develop attention. So if you do choose to come back to your breathing, you put your attention on the belly and you watch the rise and the fall. The rise and the fall. The longer you learn to hold your attention, the more powerful this prefrontal cortex and the nucleus accumbens becomes. This is your key to attention. All right, so let's run through the drills. Step 1, practice noticing and then quietening your thoughts, the chatter in the mind. All right, so you've got to pay attention. What am I thinking? Second, take time to strengthen your capacity for focused attention. Your breathing, a meditation practice, reading, paying attention to another person, all very powerful. As you get more skilled, you're going to realize that sometimes you need to be really present and focused, and other times you need to step back and see the bigger picture with broad situation awareness. Once you can do that with your brain, you can start to be much more flexible. All right, so you face a situation. First question you ask yourself, what are the 7 ways I can solve this problem? All right, it's very easy to step into a situation and say, there's no way out. That's the lazy option. If you start with, there are 7 ways to solve this problem, that gets really interesting. You've opened your thinking. Okay, well, maybe I could do this. If I did that, I could do that. And you start to reorganize. All right, so remember, when the mind is totally present, totally focused, you're either in deep sleep, in a contemplative or prayer state, or in flow. It is totally worth it. And that's why we started and finish on flow. All right, to make sure you schedule into your day a moment for flow. I think you set the goal at 1 hour to 90 minutes, where you choose a task, probably 1, 2, or 3 tasks, and you clear the decks of everything else. Switch off your phone, switch off your email, and get the job done. Remember the recovery cycle. Remember to set new goals, stretch for good goals, and to relax back into the flow. All right, so what will you change is the question to ask yourself. What have you learned about how you work, about how your altitude rises and falls? All right, what's your bounce like? Can you work on your breath? What about improving your sleep or your daily structures? What about name, tame, and reframe emotions? Remember, I feel angry. Okay, good. Tame it, breathe out, give it a little time. Okay, and reframe it with kindness. You've really changed your life experience. Learn to be present and focused. Seek flow every day and make a difference to this world, to your family, to your life by finding that flow. Thank you for your time today, and just a quick reminder, we have lots of resources to help you if you want to continue this journey. So our Resilience app is available on the website, https, S is missing, resilienceeye.com. A Resilience app takes you through this full journey with 2 days of learning, 55 videos, a pre-assessment, a post-assessment to get the kind of results we talk about. We also have coaching programs. If you'd like to be an accredited coach to work with this material, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for the time. Bounce, grow, connect, and find your flow. Cheers.